Y a continuación tendremos el Simposio de la Asociación Internacional de Educadores de Ciencias, Médicas y IAMSE, en el cual integrantes de esta asociación hablarán sobre cómo ven desde su experiencia la adaptación de la educación en ciencias de la salud a un mundo cambiante. IAMSE es una sociedad de desarrollo profesional organizada y dirigida por educadores de profesiones de salud, cuyos objetivos incluyen promover la excelencia y la innovación en la enseñanza, evaluación de estudiantes, evaluación de programas, tecnología de instrucción, simulación humana, educación centrada en el alumno. Sus actividades se basan en su creencia de que la ciencia debe seguir siendo la base para la práctica de la asistencia sanitaria moderna. Para brindar una atención integral exitosa, los profesores de la salud deben ser capaces de combinar las habilidades de compasión, comprensión y comunicación con una base de conocimiento riguroso. Este simposio va a ser moderado por el Dr. Peter G. de Jong. Él es profesor asistente de aprendizaje optimizado con tecnología en la Escuela de Medicina de la Universidad de Leiden, en los Países Bajos, editor en jefe de la Asociación Internacional de Educadores de Ciencias, Médicas y IAMSE. Vamos a recibirlo con un fuerte aplauso. Bienvenido. Él va a estar acompañado de los siguientes doctores: el doctor Richard Vari, presidente IAMSE, exdecano, fundador asociado de Educación Médica en la Escuela de Medicina Virginia Tech Carillion en Roanoke, donde lideró el desarrollo del currículo médico integrado con requisitos de investigación intensiva y un dominio transversal de interprofesionalismo. Bienvenido, adelante. También queremos doctor Richard Vari, bienvenido. Okay. Welcome. También quiero invitar al doctor Neil Osheroff. Él es tesorero de IAMSE, es profesor de bioquímica y medicina, director de la cátedra Jong Coniglio de bioquímica, director de la Academia para la Excelencia en la Educación de la Escuela de Medicina de la Universidad de Vanderbilt, y Julie Hewett, fundadora United Solutions y encargada del soporte de gestión de revistas y estrategia de redes sociales en IAMSE. Le entrego entonces la palabra al doctor Peter de Jong. Entonces, para todos, un fuerte aplauso. Welcome, bienvenidos.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. I also would like to thank the organization for inviting us to be here today on this opening day of this symposium. And especially I would like to thank Professor Carillion Rodriguez. He's the president of PIPA, and we know him already for many, many years. And I also like to thank Professor Gustavo Quintero Hernandez, president of ASCO, for inviting us here today. I will start with a few quick slides on what IAMSE is for those people in the audience that do not know us already. We're going to talk today about adapting the changing times in health science education, because so many things are changing in education. IAMSE is an organization, and what is special about our organization is it is about the educator. So we're not talking, of course we're talking about education, but we're not really looking on research and education. We are talking about you, about the educator, how you can be a good teacher for your students. We are talking about faculty development. That's what we think is so important. We do all kinds of things that you can join if you want. We have an annual meeting like a conference today here. We have webinars. Those are meetings online so that you can join from wherever you are. Those are 1-hour sessions that you can sign up for. And we have publications, things to read. We have a journal, and it was already mentioned that I'm the editor-in-chief of this journal. We also have manuals, more kind of books, all about how you can become a better teacher. You already are a good teacher, of course, but how you can become a better teacher for your students. We do all kind of other things as well. I listed here a few. We have a medical educator fellow program, a training program for youth faculty development. We have awards, we have travel grants, research grants to do research in medical education. And we also are focusing very much on our students, because several of those students, or maybe a lot of those students, will be the teachers of the future. And some are already very interested in education, so they are really want to learn about that, and we don't involve them so much. So that's what we try to do in our meetings. We really invite students to come as well and to talk about education. These are a few of our upcoming meetings. In case you're interested, in case you're somewhere in the area, the annual meeting of this year is going to be in the United States, in Virginia. We have a very special thing going on, but that's a little bit far away from here. It's in Kuala Lumpur, because we think it's important to reach out to other parts of the world where educators and teachers are. The 2020 meeting will be in the United States again, and we were very hard working. It's not completely final yet, but we are very working on getting our annual meeting in 2021 in Mexico. And of course, that's very close to you here. So keep us in mind, and if you are interested in attending that meeting, that would be wonderful. Quickly back to the lectures of today. We are with 3 speakers today. You can see their pictures, and you can already see them sitting in the chairs here. We are going to start in a minute with Dr. Vari. He's the president of IAMSE, and he's going to talk, as you can see, about the current challenges for the medical educator, because there's so much changing in the world of education. Second lecture will be by myself. My field is technology enhanced learning, so I will talk a little bit about online learning, what's happening, because you as a teacher will probably also have to do with that in the future. And then we will end with President Osheroff, also from the United States. He's going to talk about integrated curricula, because also that's something that is changing for us in the upcoming years. Afterwards, we do have some time left, I hope, for some discussion, so I hope that some of you will stay here, ask your questions if you have them. We will try to get a microphone in the audience so that you can ask your questions to us, and then we are still here as a panel to answer those. Okay, this is a short introduction. I would like to ask Vari to come forward and have his talk first. Thank you.
I have a mobile mic on. Okay. Well, thank you. I know we're up against a very important event that's called Hewett, so hopefully we'll keep it all extremely honored to be here out here. You can't. Is it on now? It's not on now? Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I had that figured out. I'm extremely honored to be here. I'm very president of IAMSE, but I'm also an aging renal physiologist who got bit by the mosquito with passion for medical education when I was in the postdoc 25 or 30 years ago. And what I'm going to tell you today may be a little bit United States centric, but I think you will appreciate already from Dr. Wang's talk that some of the challenges that we face in the United States and Europe are the same challenges that we face throughout the world when it comes to medical education. Because as you know, medical education is constantly changing. So I currently am the Senior Dean for Medical Education and Academic Affairs at a new medical school in Roanoke, Virginia. We just graduated our 6th class this year. We have 42 students in each class, so we're a small school. So I've had the opportunity to develop a new curriculum there. And the thing about Roanoke that's important is that, I'm so sorry. Can you fix that? The practice. The reason I want to show you this is that some of you have already looked in your packet, and there's a surprise at the end of this talk about why this Roanoke place in the United States and Virginia is important. So if we look at really what we're talking about in terms of challenges for medical education, this is a picture on graduation day. If we look at the outcomes for medical students, we want them to have knowledge and the ability to apply basic and clinical science knowledge to patient cases. We want them to be able to use clinical skills, communication and procedures. We want them to be able to undergo and ensure lifelong learning. We also want them to learn research principles because, as Flexner talked about 100 years ago, research is extremely important to the practice of everyday medicine. We also want them to know and understand their professional identity, compassion, role model. And we also want to have them have an appreciation of their interprofessional collaboration with their clinical colleagues. But this is the real long-term challenge. 2004 study estimated it would take 29 hours per weekday, or 351 hours per month, for a physician to stay abreast of primary care literature. That's impossible. So there's an explosion of medical knowledge, and you know that. So our long-term challenge, regardless of the curricular innovations that you've heard described already this morning, the curriculum is designed to integrate basic science with all other things. Where will we get the time? It's like trying to crowd 10 pounds of tennis in a 9-pound sack. Someone stated that by 2020, medical knowledge will double every 23 days. So it's impossible to continue to memorize all of this information. So what have we done in the past is that medical school is divided into two paths. The first 2 years for basic science, the second 2 for clinical practice. There were departmental courses. And we became, as medical educators, the information provider, providing content. Schools were developed with experts in every discipline. We had anatomists, physiologists, biochemists. And it was essentially lecture-based. But what happened? Well, what happened was medical education evolved, just like all systems evolve. Due to lots of constraints that I won't go into, departments were combined, so all those departments were shrinking down into one department of biomedical sciences. There was a push for basic science and clinical integration to bring basic science early on, and then bring clinical science early on, and move basic science into the later years. Access to information became almost instantaneous. Our students now are so technologically savvy with their instruments that they can find information faster than we can tell them. Students stop coming to class. In the United States, medical students don't go to lecture. And a lot of this is because they can get the content faster than you can provide it. And we have in the United States an assessment disconnection. That's one of our challenges that we'll talk about in just a minute. Another important thing that evolved was that medical educators started to study medical education and teaching and learning. And because of that, we enlisted the help of our cognitive psychologists so that we began to learn understanding how to learn. And so as a result of that, we started developing active learning modalities to help our students learn basic science. We actually had an argument several years ago about, do we even need basic science to practice medicine? So we went through that valley, and we came out on the other side, I think, together with a fundamental understanding that that argument was really fallacious. That we had clinicians, some clinicians, not all, saying, I don't need basic science fundamentals to understand the practice of medicine. And we had some basic scientists trying to protect their integrity by saying basic science is so fundamental. So we came through that with a fundamental realization. Wrong one, I'm so sorry. Getting the wrong one. I apologize. So we came out of the end of that with that science is a fundamental, foundational bedrock for clinical practice in medicine. What I propose to you is that we've had now a paradigm shift in medical education. If you can use the banking model as an example, we used to have the banks where we take the money and we kind of get our money out of the bank. because that's where the content was. Now we have a situation where medical students are using all kinds of technology, so we need to change our role. So challenge number one, we have to focus our emphasis of medical education on student learning rather than faculty teaching. Got it. So how do you do that? There's so many approaches that you've already heard about. Team-based learning, problem-based learning, all kinds of these new approaches. And so what does this cause is stress in the faculty. And that is there are faculty resistance for change, successful engaging lecturer, why should I change? Student apprehension, we like to go to lecture, why should we? This is our learning style and we have a disconnect. So I would like to give you a couple of resources. The IAMSE puts out a guide to active learning model that you can access, and so this will help you develop some of those techniques. Challenge number two, find your true strengths as a medical educator, enhance them. Embrace new roles as a medical educator. Learn about new and adapt to new generational technologies and themes. And I recommend to you Ron Hardin and Pat Lilly's new book, The Roles of the Medical Educator. And you've heard some of that this morning about we have to become different than just giving out content. We have to learn how to become a facilitator, a resource developer, serve as a role model, become a tutor. So those are ways that we can change. Challenge number three is our assessment disconnection. Make sure that whatever assessments you are using in your programs match your curriculum. In the United States, we have a disconnection because we have now devised a residency screening tool that's supposed to give license, and we're using that to screen residency interviews. There are over 44,000 residency applications in the United States for 30,000 positions. A lot of those are international medical foreign graduates that don't get spots. And so what this does has a consequence on the curriculum that we have. And then it causes an evaluation of the curriculum because students spend time just preparing for these high-stakes exams. And it creates a negative learning environment. It increases stress, burnout, and suicide amongst our students. So make sure that you align your assessment methodology with your teaching curriculum. So I don't know if you can remember back from a while back, a catch-22 is a paradoxical situation from which an individual cannot escape because of contradictory rules. This was a famous book and then a famous movie. What we have created is this catch-22. We must prepare students for clinical learning on wards in residency, but that takes some time away from studying for the boards, which they have to pass to go on to the wards and score increasingly high numbers to get a residency interview. So it is a conundrum and a catch-22. But there are hope. There was just there's several things that you can do for this. Ron Hardin and Pat Lilly's book will help change your active learning roles. We have the IAMSE web seminars, individualize your chances for participating in these web seminar conferences. I'd like to now personally invite you to a meeting in Roanoke that's coming up in 2019, where we will talk about some of these things that I just mentioned. How do you get translational research into the medical curriculum? Done in Cleveland using gene therapy. How do you integrate difficult topics into the medical curriculum? We kind of overlook. How do you use disruptive technology to make education better, not just different? And then how do you deal with this new generation Z? They have all kinds of different properties that they're going to bring into the classroom. So I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick, for this first presentation. We will switch to the second one. Second, that can come up. Yes, there it is. Okay, another thing that is changing, I think, in medical education and education in general is the technology, and it's not the first time that it was mentioned today. Technology is changing our lives. and also entering teaching. At Leiden University Medical Center, I'm assistant professor in technology and house learning. We do a lot of things with online learning, with technologies, and I would like to take you with us a little bit today about what's coming up, what's happening in teaching and learning with technology. You know, probably all know that students already start very, very young with technology. What was very rare for ourselves, for the kind of elderly people in the room, we saw it come, we saw it being introduced. Children nowadays, they grow up with technology. We have to realize it's just a tool. It's something that can help us in teaching. It's not going to replace, or at least I'm not saying that we have to replace our teaching, but it's a tool that we can use, and it gives teachers and students access to a lot of new things, new resources, new ways, new opportunities to learn. So, what is online learning? That's a very difficult question because so many people name it differently. At least it's something to do with delivering teaching that can be informal, can be formal, by using computer technology. And that can be a lot. I'll list a few. Online books, online tutorials. We can do some things with simulation, with games. Of course, testing, assessment is also something that cannot only be on paper anymore, but can be done by the computer. We can train our students with patients, with virtual patients on the computer or on the internet. We have open online courses, which is quite very popular nowadays. The massive open online courses, for example, that we can follow. Virtual reality, I'm going to show you something about that. Video, there are so many things in technology that really can help us as a teacher. These are a few examples what you probably already see happening in your classroom. Students are using apps, they are using their devices, their computers that help us to look up for information. On the right you can even use the technology as a voting system. We all know that if you ask a question to your students, not everybody's happy to raise his hand and show what he wants to say, but if you use a tool like this, it's very easy to press a button, so you can really increase the interactivity in your classroom with the students, and we know that improves learning a lot. You can really have a good discussion then with your students because you know exactly what they think. You record what you wanted to say, and students can go in. Like you go to a museum, and when you watch a painting, now they are watching something else, but they can get an explanation. And we know that using these materials is so wonderful, instead of locking the door and not getting that to our students anymore. So it opens new ways sometimes. These are more kind of examples of e-learning modules you probably know. You can go to your computer, start up a module, and you learn something. It's an e-learning lesson. It can be about anything. And in general, those are very well appropriate for knowledge. You can learn knowledge from it. It's a listing kind of a book. This is already getting a little bit more exciting. Games. We all know games, and we think maybe about very silly things when we think about games. We do know that once you start playing a game and you like the game, you don't want to stop anymore, so that's a good thing sometimes to keep our students engaged. And you can use it for skills training, for example, for procedures. It brings in some kind of social interaction between the students who are playing, and competition is an important one in the game. We see games coming up on all kinds of different areas. On the right you see a patient coming in somewhere in the emergency room, and the doctor or nurse is going to treat them. And you do that as a game, so you have to make sure that you do the right things and you do them in time, and otherwise you're going to lose the game. What you see on the bottom is completely something different, and maybe you ask what the hell has that to do with medical education, but this is an example of a game that has been developed for small children, for patients. Small children with cancer, they are not happy, they don't know what's happening, they have a lot of doctors around them, they have pain, they have all kind of stuff, and those patients don't want to use their medication once. Sometimes they just resist, like, I don't like this life anymore. This game has been developed, and in this game they are fighting the cancer cells. They are fighting, in fact they learn about what the cancer is, but they don't know that they learn that, but they learn about the cancer and they have to fight the cancer cells. And they got so involved in that game, and they learn that medication is also important. And we see that those patients, those young patients, they take their medication much better. And they start believing again in that field. So that shows the power of a game like that can change people's minds. And we're very happy that those young patients do that game and have a better chance of survival about their cancer. Virtual reality, that is something that is not so very old. We use virtual reality and then you have those glasses on your face. That means that you do not see anything else. So remember that you have kind of a box in front of you, and in that box you see a virtual environment. You can see something that of course is not there. You can see that on the students on the left. They are just somewhere in the hospital, but they think they are completely in a different environment. So we can simulate that environment and we can show them all kinds of things that are happening there. An example of what we show is what you see on the bottom. That's a recording of a kidney transplantation. This is a real recording, that's a real patient, and we took a video of that, about several hours long, and that's a 360-degree video. So the recording is all around the camera. And what the students can do is they put on those glasses. They see what you, for example, see in the image below, but if they turn around in the room and they just go like this, they can see what's happening behind them in that theater, in that surgical theater. So they can really follow, they cannot really interact, but they can really see what's happening in an operating room during a kidney transplantation. Something that we cannot teach our students, that we cannot show our students when we have large groups of 300 people. We cannot do that. Maybe one or two you can enter the room, but not so many. So this is a way to get people already involved, to learn them a little bit about surgical procedures that they will follow later on. Another reality kind of thing is called augmented reality. That's also something that you have to put on your face, but if you look well, you can see through this. This is kind of glasses that you can look through, so you can still see each other. That's the wonderful thing. You're not in a box like that. And you see some kind of projection, a holographic projection. This is an example of that, a model that we are using in Leiden with the anatomy. And as you can see, we see a leg. But if you are in that room without the glasses, you don't see a leg, you don't see anything, you just see two people. But those people see the leg. And the good thing about this technology is that because you can look through those glasses, you can still see each other. You can talk to each other and you can help each other. On the right is the teacher, on the left is the student, and they can discuss what is this exactly, which muscle is this, or what bone is that, so they can really talk, they can interact, and you can do this with more than one student at the same time. These are very special models. It's not something that you're going to do with all your students the whole year long. This is very specific, and it's also not working always. Some students, they don't have a good feel for three dimensions. They don't really learn from this. So it's not always a miracle, but it is something that can be very special to explain things that are difficult to explain with a book. You know, with a picture of the leg is different than having a leg like this. I want to say a few slides something about MOOCs, massive open online courses, because that's something else that's happening in the world and very well accessible for all of us. MOOCs are massive open online Open means that they are free, everybody can join, and you don't have to prove that you're a student or anybody can join. And massive just means that there are a lot of people in that course because so many people sign up. Can be over thousands of people. It's a new concept. It's online only. It's very well structured. So really, students go from step to step, from week to week. They follow a program. Some people thought it was a little bit disruptive. So many students are now following open online courses like that. Some people were afraid that universities were going away within a few years. That's not going to happen. But we are really finding ways to use this. They were not designed like that. They were designed like, we have a course, we want to show how great we are in this topic, and the whole world can follow this course. But now we realize there's so much beautiful material and it's free. Everybody can access it. Why don't we use this in our curriculum? And it's also for you to use. It doesn't matter if this course is an American course or a Dutch course or an Italian course. You can sign up, your students can sign up, it is for free. And if you use those materials in your teaching, you can all of a sudden use materials that you don't have in your own school. If there's a world famous professor somewhere in New York created a book, why not have your students learn from him online, and you can still discuss with your students what you think about it. So you're still the teacher in charge, but you can use those materials. These are a few examples in those online courses. We have lectures, we have animations, we have interviews, sometimes with patients, so that really the students also see that there's a medical problem, but there's also a patient behind it, and the patient can also tell what he or she thinks about it. There are books on it, there are discussion fora, so students can talk to each other, which is also very interesting because we're talking about an international website here. So your students will also run into students from the US or students from Europe. And everybody thinks a little bit different about some medical things, and that's okay. And we can learn from each other by discussing, okay, why do they think different in Europe than they do in Colombia? And sometimes there are rules or regulations or there are beliefs or whatever it is, and you can learn from that. So what we see happen now, there are so many, and there are so many free available courses that we are really trying to incorporate that in our curriculum. And I really encourage you to think about that as well. And we recently published something about tips how to do that. It's not difficult to do, but you just have to think about it before you start doing it. It's a wonderful addition to your teaching. Okay, I'm getting close to the end here because does it have advantages to use technology, to use online learning? I think it has advantages. It is distributed learning, it's from a distance. You can choose your own time and place. Your students are not needed in this room today, but they can do it another time, they can do it from another place. Students can go in, and if you know already a little bit about it, then they go in and very quickly through it, but if they are, sometimes some things they feel difficult, then they have more time to go into it in more depth, so it's more individual. There's connectivity, I already said, with other students, so they meet other students there online. And what we see is that a lot of students like to do that, so they really enjoy it and they get engaged. Another good thing is maybe that they get used to using online resources, because as a doctor they will do that as well. In some occasions it can be cost saving if you replace something by online. Does it work? Now luckily it works. Students learn from online learning, but it's not that it's 10 times better. I'm not saying that. It is just as good as it is. And you just make a decision, okay, this is very helpful if I can do that online, and this, I just want to do this in the classroom. So it's not a replacement. If you do it very, very well, then it can be a little bit better. If you do it in combination well, that's called blended learning. So you they do something online, but you also talk about it in the classroom. Those combinations work the best. And sometimes it doesn't work. Like the virtual reality with the glasses on, some people get dizzy, some people get sick, they move around and they don't feel well. Now, then that student cannot use that technology. It's not always better. But I still believe that there are so many opportunities to do. Now the final question. Yes, this also has an impact on the educator, I guess. We cannot easily say, well, let's do that. Just you do some online learning tomorrow. That's not that easy. So how do you do that? Develop a good learning, online learning thing. How do you engage your students to go there? Because they might think, you know, that's easy. I don't have to go to school now. I can go to the beach. No, they still have to go to the online learning. So how can we help them with that? What I think is important, what we know is important from experience, is that you do that with multiple people. You're not alone as a teacher. You should not be alone, because as a teacher you know the content, you know the medical things that you want to teach to your students. But you also need somebody who knows everything about education, who has studied for that, who knows about pedagogy, who can help you how to do that, and you also need technical people to create it. But not one of those three, not only a technician, because he will create something wonderful, but that you cannot use it. So you have to do that together. And I think this is also an area where we need faculty development in the future. Is everything done and known already? No. There are a lot of things that we still do not know for online learning. How is the instructional design of those courses? What's exactly in it and how does it work? Is it suitable for group work or is it more individual? Those kind of things, we are still looking into that. How can you motivate your students or keep them motivated to go to do this and get them engaged? Maybe we have to help our students a little bit with self-regulated learning. You have to do it on your own because your teacher, there's still a teacher, but you see him next week or so. You cannot ask him today. So you have to do it on your own. And maybe we should train our students a little bit more on being independent on their own. And then the same thing is about that engagement. So there are a lot of areas that we still have to do some research in, but things are going very well. This was a short overview of technology, because that's also, I think, a part of the changing world of the educators and the students and the teachers. So thank you for your attention for this talk. Talk to us about the integrated curriculum. And after that we have some time for your questions, so if you still have questions about my talk or the one from later, please keep them in mind for later.
Hello, my name is Osheroff. I'm honored to be here today. We're fighting with lunch, so let me ask you to do a favor. I'll do my best to get done close to 12:30, and if you can stay to the end of my talk, those that want to go to lunch can go to lunch. Those that want to be planning this to have a lot of time for questions and interaction, those that want to sit around and fill talk, we'll do the second wave of lunch, so I appreciate that. As you see from this slide, I'm from Vanderbilt University. By American standards, this is actually a fairly old university. This is we graduated over 140 medical classes. And for a number of years, we were a very old-fashioned university. In the last decade and a half, I think we've become very modern and actually are helping to lead the way in a lot of areas in U.S. Medical education. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit today. I want to start off with this slide. Why is it important to integrate foundational science and clinical science? Because about 2 or 3 years ago, some of us wrote up an abstract for the Association of American Medical Colleges meeting. It's a huge meeting in the United States, at about 4,500 people. And when we got back with what the reviewer said, that integration of basic science and foundational sciences in the clinical years was a novel concept, but wasn't important. So we've taken that as a mantra to try to explain to people why it is. There have been a number of studies that have been done on this. This first one was actually driven by the International Association of Medical Science Educators, but it perceived a reduction in devaluation of foundational sciences. And ultimately they came up and they found out that in their studies, that foundational sciences really give a framework for understanding the clinical sciences, and that it should be taught throughout the curriculum. And of course, this is a bunch of basic scientists telling you this, but there are actually a lot of work with cognitive psychology now. Nikki Woods has really been leading the way for the Wilson Center, University of Toronto. And what she found is that understanding how things work, and understanding the foundational sciences behind clinical medicine really allows you to integrate things, to think about things well, to hold them in your head, to understand them longer than you would by simply saying, here's what this disease is, here's how you treat it. It also enhanced knowing novel things, so given an unknown situation, you could reason your way through it better. But it came with some problems, because she started thinking about what does integration really mean. And it turns out that it's very specific. That if you say, okay, I'm a biochemist, if I say, we're talking about carbohydrate metabolism today, and the next hour of lecture, we're going to talk about diabetes and apply it. That's not really integration. Students learn it's okay. It turns out if you say, okay, we're going to talk about diabetes, this disease that many of your patients will have, and now the next day we'll talk about the underlying causes, that's actually even worse. They don't understand why. Ultimately, to make it work, you have to talk about it literally minute by minute. You have to be going through a patient back and forth and back. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So, but I want to talk a bit about curriculum. We will talk a bit about putting clinical work and the context of a patient in the pre-clerkship phase, the early phase of the medical school, and you heard some talks about that this morning. And most everyone here does that. I mean, there's not a basic science. How many teach sciences? Please, a few hands up. All right, good. None of you teach it without talking about clinical medicine, right? But putting the sciences back into the wards has become much a bigger challenge. So this is what it looks like from a basic scientist point of view. In the pre-clerkship phase, we talk foundational science, we talk about clinical work. In the clinical phase, if you look, you can barely see, at least for us, we can barely see the foundational sciences. The other problem is there's a brick wall between it, that we didn't talk back and forth. We tried to talk, we couldn't talk. And we decided that was a bad way to teach medical school. So we now have something we call Curriculum 2.0. And it's a much fuzzier, if you will, curriculum. It doesn't quite show it there. We've reduced the pre-clerkship phase from 2 academic years to 1 calendar year. All right, we've reduced by about 30%, 35%. In response to that, we put it back in the last 2 years, which is called the immersion phase. So we're putting sciences back in later on, where for any of you that teach sciences, this is the gold standard. Wouldn't you love to teach your student about cancer chemotherapy while they're actually treating patients with the drugs we're talking about? And in the middle we have the clerkship phase, where the students are actually learning some real clinical medicine. And we want to teach foundational sciences across our curriculum, and also the other thing that we were doing in the pre-clerkship phase back in the day was that we were teaching a ton of basic sciences, but the problem was we weren't teaching it in a context that the students could then retrieve the information when they got the wards. They almost had to relearn their sciences. So today what we're trying to do is teach it in a way where the students can transition into the wards much better. So let me talk a bit about the pre-clerkship phase. As I said, some of these things will sound familiar, heard some of these things Dr. Patel this morning. Then what we're going to talk about is, I think, the really novel aspect of what we're doing is putting sciences back in the clinical years. Okay, back in the day, well, one of the things, we're still giving some lectures, but we're giving lectures, we want to do them in patient context. Back in the day as a biochemist, I would talk about oxidative phosphorylation. So the first thing I ask my class is, let me ask you this. How many people breathed this morning? Okay, there's still some anaerobes out there. There's still a few of you that are doing it by another way. All right. And then I always ask the question, okay, why do you breathe? And the students would look kind of perplexed. And they say, well, you need oxygen. It's like, very good, why do you need oxygen? It turns out, after all is said and done, you need oxygen to make ATP. That's your energy source. You only have seconds worth of this. And every day you're making somewhere between 50 and 75 kilograms of ATP a day. And we talk about oxidative phosphorylation, we talk about the dreaded Krebs cycle, we talk about what mitochondria look like. And we used to give, I look back in the day, so I've been running a course for 29 years. Back in the day when it was a biochem course, we gave 2.5 hours in the Krebs cycle. How many people here want to have 2.5 hours in the Krebs cycle? The answer is nobody. I'm a biochemist, I didn't want to have it. So today, I give that lecture, but it's now called mitochondrial disease. And we still talk about these things. We talk about in the context of the patient in the middle, diseases that you get. We talk about things like heteroplasmy and genetic bottleneck as they relate to the fact that it turns out that mitochondria also have a genome, and it has tremendous effects on genetics of disease, and the whole thing goes to the context of the patient. And it turns out it's a much more fun lecture to give, it's a much better lecture to give, and the students, when they get in the wards, if they see a patient with a mitochondrial disease, they can retrieve the information much more readily. The other things that we do, we use more active learning. This is what our classroom looked like last year. We got students out of this. What it looks like this year. We talked about it's almost like a TBL classroom. It's a dinner seating. You're walking among the students, and actually you get to know them much more rapidly. You get to interact with them a lot more, and actually learn much better. I always tell my students that when they say, "What do I need to memorize?" I say, "You don't have to memorize anything. I want you to know it." Knowing and memorizing aren't the same things. This is what our weekly schedule looks like. Dr. Vari said it takes 29 hours a week to learn the new literature. We actually have our students in class about 29 or 30 hours a week. But you see, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we have case-based learning groups, which are basically problem-based learning. These are highly interactive. You start with a case, go through a patient. You're basically going through a patient history, but in a very safe environment. The students go, they work through it, they start to understand the foundational sciences. This was a group I had, and it was fantastic because these are some metabolic cases, and the students are going up and each contributing to this wonderful metabolic map in a way that, trust me, I used to teach it, I used to have to take metabolism courses, and all students did was memorize it. Now they actually, amazingly enough, for those of you that teach metabolism, they enjoy metabolism in my course, and they enjoy it because it explains things. This is their patient. So these have all worked, I think, really well and have taken our students to the point where they can retrieve the information that they're learning in the pre-clerkship phase and apply it to the wards. But now let's talk about what I think is really the most unique portion of our curriculum. I think the way we constructed our pre-clerkship phase is unique. I think the fact that we've been able to give the students the amount of foundational sciences they need in one calendar year is unique. They are more inquisitive on the rewards. Our board scores have this is I think we've had 5 years of our students in this curriculum in the U.S. STEP boards. They're really important. The first year we tied for the highest in our school's history, and they've gone up every year since then. So as far as we can tell, it has worked. But I will also tell you, as someone that helped devise that curriculum, that there's no individual component of it that's unique. We did not invent team-based learning or case-based learning or things like that. The one aspect where I think Vanderbilt really has done something that is totally unique is in the immersion phase. In the immersion phase, now we give them 2 years after they've done their clerkships. We allow them to do advanced clinical experiences, integrated science courses, which I'll talk about in just a second, acting internships, which are the equivalent of sub-Is in many places. They do research. They also have learning communities. So they're doing medical humanities. We've done that all 4 years. I will also point out that our students are in clinic from about the 2nd or 3rd week of medical school. So in the pre-clerkship phase, they're learning health system sciences and seeing patients as well. But what I really want to talk about are the integrated science courses, because if you look at the immersion phase goals, the number one goal, and this was our administration said, so these are our deans, these are our clinicians, sets the goal of deepening foundational science knowledge during meaningful clinical engagement. So once again, for a basic scientist, this is the golden standard. Understanding and learning foundational sciences while you're seeing patients. And then there's a whole bunch of other things, of course, besides that we need to make them very competent physicians in understanding how to do things. So what are these integrated science courses? Our students have to at least last for 1 month. The only thing you're doing is you're taking these courses. They have to take at least 4 of them. They can take more if they want. They're hard to describe individually because they're all different, but they all have certain things in common. The first is they are working to deepen foundational science knowledge, but once again, during meaningful clinical engagement. These students are taking care of patients where they're learning their sciences. So it has to be anchored and reinforced with the patient experiences. These last an average of 50 hours a week because these students are on call. They're seeing patients nights and weekends while they're learning their materials. They all use multiple modes of instruction, but we really have an emphasis in experiential learning, so active learning. And of course, these have relatively small groups. My medical school only has 96 students, So at biggest ones of these, we maybe have a quarter of the class. Some may only have 4 or 5 students. So if you only have 5 students, you're having a discussion, not really having a lecture. Active student involvement in patient care has to be part of it. Each core learning objective, other than sort of clinical skills, has to include foundational sciences in it. And the assessment is really important because the assessment largely takes place in their understanding the foundational sciences that they've learned along the way. We have 16 of these that we have right now, and you can see they range from things like cardiovascular disease, but also things like community health care. So they're learning more social sciences rather than what we would consider basic sciences. Moving through an awful lot of things. The bottom one is on health systems sciences as well. The one I want to kind of talk a little bit about and highlight is precision cancer medicine, one of our first number of innovations and iterations. It was actually just the subject of an IAMSE webinar about 2 or 3 days ago. From Ken Dahlman, who really came up with things. And in this one, just as an example, and once again, it's very difficult to say this is how you put the course together. If any of you are interested in these, come visit us at Vanderbilt. We'll be happy to show you these, because they all run differently. They just have different concepts in mind. This one has personal learning goals. The students, what do you want to do? So one of the things they do is you say, I want to be a surgeon. Someone else says they want to be an internist. So, okay, if I want to be a surgeon, we'll put you into a breast cancer clinic if you're going to be seeing surgery there. If you want to be working with pediatrics, we'll put you in a PCMOM clinic. So we try to tailor it to the students. There are Meet the Expert seminars, there are online modules. There's case-based learning, there's team-based learning, but the whole time they're doing this, whether they're seeing patients, they're going to tumor boards, they have clinical experience essays, and they have to come up with what they call a burning question presentation. So based on what they're seeing with their patients, they have to come up with some things, do research on it, and be able to present it to their group. Assessment is important, and assessment drives learning. I can also tell you we're using competencies, and assessment also drives development of the kind of behaviors that you want to see in your young physicians. But in this case, these are the evaluated assessments of just some random courses I pulled. These are on a 5-point Likert scale. Things like your overall learning experiences, does this motivate me to continue learning in my area, and I'm going to use foundational sciences later on. I would recommend this course to my peers. And what you see on a 5-point scale, and this is putting basic sciences in the last 2 years of med school, we have numbers up here that are, 4.9. The worst ones are 4.4, 4.5, 4.6. One of the things we did early in a different iteration of the curriculum is we had a capstone course. I think you have capstone courses later in the curriculum where you go back and talk about the foundational sciences like one time. No, in the U.S. they were doing this for a while, and they're terrible because you're seeing patients. They pull you out of patients. They put you in a classroom for a month. Go back to pathways, and they expect you to enjoy yourself. So this is what we're doing really on the wards, and the kind of comments that we get are great experience. One of the things, there's one in there that's everything we did was relevant. You should take this course, great course. The best course I've ever taken, best class I've ever taken in my life. We routinely get one to say the hardest course I've ever taken. I just ran into one of our students who was doing an emergency medicine one. In emergency medicine, they're learning the foundational sciences. They're really learning there a lot of anatomy, neurosciences, pharmacology, toxicology. And she said it was the hardest course she'd ever taken in her entire life, but she's loving every minute of it. So anytime you can get your medical students that tell you that it's the hardest course they've ever had learning basic sciences, and they're loving it, and they're doing it to their friends. For those of you that have PhDs in the audience or the MDs that are teaching the foundational sciences, this is what you really want to see. There are challenges to go with this. I'll point out, and this is really my last slide, so if you're getting ready to go lunch, I'll get ready to in a minute. One of the most important things is maintaining scientific rigor, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But faculty recruitment and participation is difficult. You really have to have teams of clinicians and basic scientists that are willing to work together, or clinicians that really understand the foundational sciences and their importance. Of course, capacity, there's some other things that go on. Students, there was some marketing we had to do early on, but it's now really just part of what they do, and they really look forward to it. The assessment is always an ongoing challenge. Really quickly, maintaining scientific rigor is an issue. And what we've done is there's a group of us, there are 6 of us, they're called Master Science Teachers. All of us have PhDs or we're trained in basic, whether we're doing it still or not, we're trained in advanced sciences. We, for the most part, teach heavily or heavily involved in pre-collegiate curriculum, and anyone that wants to propose a course has to go through us first. So they come, we talk about it, they give us an early proposal. We're there to assess and make sure that they do things properly, but we're also there to help them and act as a resource. So they come back to with a formal proposal, we give assessments on it, and then every year after the courses are given, they have to come back to, we look and do the assessments on them to make sure that we can maintain this. So that's one of the other things I love about where I am, because and how many of your universities with physicians sit down with basic scientists and have to explain their courses and defend their courses to them. And actually it's been a marvelous collaborative arrangement with us. So I will thank you with a couple of things on the pre-collegiate phase. We put about a half an hour for discussion. For those of you that want to run out and go to lunch, we respect that. I'm a biochemist, I understand metabolism. But so if you do, go ahead, and for those of you who want to stick around and talk, I think we'll have a microphone in the audience. We have a microphone out there.
Yes,
we're happy to take questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we have some people with a microphone in the audience. So are there any questions for one of the 3 of us?